Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Excellent. So welcome everyone. I'm Alison from the Southern Cross Postgraduate Association. We've got this wonderful collaboration with SCU Careers and Bec Brown in a series of postgrad masterclasses to help you along with your career. And today's the first one, Tip Tops, Tip Tops.
TikTok's good.
The bread. Top tips for success workshops. So pleased to see you all here. I'll put a few links in the chat box in a few minutes about becoming a member of the Postgraduate Association and also next week. So this is every Friday. We're having a careers masterclass with Bec Brown. So I'll put a link in how to register for next week's one, which is writing a winning cover letter and answering your selection criteria. So thanks for everyone. That's enough from me. Over to you, Bec. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have Susie Grizel here too, and thank you so much, Alison, with our Southern Cross Careers team. That if you haven't come across our superstar teams that are on campuses at Lismore, Coffs Harbour and the Gold Coast. Susie's down there in Lismore. Fantastic service, and I am super duper happy to be here with Alison and Susie for the first in our series. Hi everyone. Nice. We've got another four more weeks after this one. So perhaps, Susie, before I kick off, given the amazing work that you and your team do with our postgraduate students, would you be happy to just share your fabulousness with them all, how you can help the students when Alison and I are not here, all the interim bits and the amazing things, and you guys are doing things all the time, so not always I was even just thinking, time, it was November, I think, the last time, so you guys are always updating things you're doing, so I'm going to hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Bec. So we're excited in the Careers and Employability team to be supporting everyone in the Postgrad Association. We offer a free service to all SCU students. So you are very welcome to book in with us after you've done this amazing suite of content. You'll get lots of ideas and you might need ongoing support. So we're here to help you with that. At any time in your course. Our job is technically to help you, I guess, turn your course into employment, and how you do that individually is up to you. Like, we have thousands of students who have such different journeys. So, but we've got lots of resources to support that. So online and also face-to-face nowadays, you can come and visit us for an appointment if you need that. Or Bec, will you show them our website?
Yes. Yeah. As long as we've got my little sharing goes, but I've got all I've got your links and your contact, all those things in this already embedded in the slides. But absolutely, yeah.
It's so easy to find us if you go to the SCU homepage and just / the word careers with an S. That's where our website is, and you can go in there and find us, or email us at careers@scu.edu.au. But, anything you can think of to do with your career. We don't tend to look at the courses and the structure of what you're doing inside your course, but more your career planning and development and areas. If you need part-time employment, we often run events. We have a careers day coming in July. On every campus, there'll be some careers events where employers come to meet the students and sales pitch themselves to attracting students to their jobs. But we also have a jobs board that's already inside our webpage. So all of those things, if you need any further information, ask Bec. She knows most of everything that we've got and knows where to find everything. But then also you can use our service after if you need us.
Thank you, Susie. I think it's so important. and I'm so glad you're here, Susie, because the students, you get busy and they get into their courses and then they get so many emails and so much information. And I think knowing how accessible the careers team and the services that are there and that it's ongoing support. So I'm here with Alison. We run these workshops and then we run some additional face-to-face off the back of these. But you've got, and we're here throughout the year running these series a couple of times a year. But I think the really important thing for students to know is that even if they're new here, they're busy or they're remote, that they've got access to you guys all of the time, and that they can, there's a part-time job that they want, or they're frightened about an interview, or they're lost. Or I think one of the other things is sometimes when you enroll in a course and that it doesn't, you're ambitious and you want to do really well with your study, your postgraduate study, but it's not what you're expecting. And that's where the girls and the boys are in the team, make sure I get those boys, that they're there to really prompt you and facilitate you finding and driving your own future career. So I think it's probably one of the most important things that you will hear from this series. And Susie will be here popping in to each of these sessions that we do. So you'll get you'll get reminded that you do have this support, and that you have Alison and the team also with the further support with your postgraduate study as well. Because I think even if you study face-to-face, it can get lonely and isolating and overwhelming with information. And so having simple ways to get help and to get what you need to get through your study. And Alison and Susie and I, we all study and have studied, and we know how hard it is, don't we, in terms of, just juggling everything. Yeah, juggling. But we also know how good, and I heard something really interesting, and this all relates to this thing, because this week is about the holistic view of career, and I heard some really interesting science around achieving goals. And what they found is, oddly enough, it is the journey, and we forget the journey because we're so trying to get somewhere with our degrees. But our goals, it is the journey, and the science is in the journey that the most rewards. So they studied these athletes and people that achieved amazing things, and they found that they were actually happier on their path. So if you can, even when it gets painful, to keep sight of why you came here to study, and what it is, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Keep an eye on what that goal is, and that can help you during those difficult times, when you are juggling all those multiple things in the world that we're in at the moment. So I'm super stoked to be here and to have these beautiful team of people to be bringing it to you. All right, so maybe before we kick off into it, do you guys mind just typing into the chat box what courses you guys are doing here? We've got a list behind the scenes, but lovely just to, and then anything about where you're heading, ambitions, anything you'd like to share. Oh, hi, Di, popped in there. Hello, Paula, that you'd like to share with us about. This week is an overview. Oh, pretty photo, Susie. So what are you studying? Where are you heading? And also, as we move along, please feel free to type anything into the chat box. I will swing between the slides and the chat box with you guys, but please feel free to comment, ask any questions that you have. Oh, Master of Primary Teaching. Susie's background is in education. She's also doing some postgraduate study in education, along with her life in the careers team. Masters by thesis. Oh, Risa, and what area or planning. Oh, progress, nice, to a PhD. Alison has a PhD in a really interesting arena, which we talked about last, psychology, professional masters, nice. Super exciting time to be in all of those arenas. Just sliding through the chat box here. Oh, here we go. Honours, psychology. Oh, accounting. Nice. More accounting. Great. Any of the business students, and in fact, Yanzi, we've done a unit together before. We will probably meet. I teach across just a couple of the units in the postgrad business. Lovely. A really mixed cohort of students. Fabulous. All right. Let's get into it. Now, just a heads up, we're going to be talking about the elements of your career, but we will actually be expanding on the key components of this week. We're going to be expanding on those in the coming weeks. And if you can't come along to the live session, I love having you here live, even if I always talk about folding the washing, just having that chance to listen along and have that sense of, being somewhere live is help, but even listening to the recordings. So the recordings, if you miss one of the weeks, Alison has put links in here, but they will be available for you if you miss. And you want to come, also if you want to come back, perhaps things change in your, you suddenly need to get a part-time job, or you're making some other changes, you want to come back and you've got to do a job that requires selection criteria, for example. So coming back to these, beautiful. Friday 10th, yes. So our second one next week, we're going to be diving more deeply into cover letters, selection criterias for your application process. All right. So just very quickly, Susie's covered off on this, and I find this slide helpful because you just get a bit of a snapshot. They can do more of this, but these are the key things that they can do. They can also, which I think we talked about, they can direct you towards vacancies, so job vacancies. They have some fantastic samples, which I think you'll find really useful. All right. So we begin this series talking about self-awareness. And why does self-awareness matter? Well, it matters for it's probably one of, and I imagine if Susie's, she may still be here behind the scenes, I have no doubt, and Alison too, and probably any professional midway through their career would attest to the fact that knowing more about yourself in the career journey, process, career development, the benefit of that, but being able to communicate that to a future employer is absolutely critical. But it's also critical for decision making around what sorts of jobs to look for, what sorts of, if you're going into accounting, for example, are you going to be a good match for smaller firms in a regional area, or do you want to go for more prestigious, larger scale accounting firms? Do you want to be doing accounting in a hotel industry? Do you want to be doing accounting in state government? Do you want to be doing accounting in local government? Do you want to what area of is it tax accounting, for example? And yeah, so in the application process, and this is a real example of this gentleman who applied for as you can see, he applied for 526 jobs and he didn't get an interview. He changed tact and he tailored each application based on his strengths. And then he was on his way. Now, this is something that myself or at a different time, Susie's team can really help you with, is helping you further tailor your application. ChatGTP, as an example in terms of the use of AI, can be really helpful in terms of giving you some base foundation in terms of your cover letter and your application process, but making your application unique to who you are is the key to being able to communicate with future employers. And communicating with the future employer and demonstrating your uniqueness and your unique fit to that particular role and the organization is your key to success. So, how do we do this? And we will talk more about this in the context next week, in the context of your cover letter, in the context of your resume, in the context of selection criteria, and in the context of the interview. But in a brief version, these are the areas in which you need to communicate your uniqueness, and I encourage you to engage with the SCU careers team's career resources that you can access from that homepage to help you actually not only gain the language of your individuality to include from your results of some of the tests, the quizzes, and activities and so forth, but to help you develop that confidence and that awareness of how you can be a standout candidate. So, for example, if you're communicating your interest, what sorts of activities do you like to do in your spare time, and how could that potentially relate to your degree in your degree in postgraduate degree in education or in psychology? So, for example, if it was in psychology, perhaps you enjoy listening to particular podcasts, or you're involved in some community activities with youth. It might be youth. It might be youth in terms of basketball, for example. Perhaps you play basketball and then you do some coaching or some mentoring. And you would know that if you do coaching or mentoring, you're exposed to issues associated or challenges that people have associated with psychology. And the same principles would apply in terms of education that intersect between, coaching and education, mentoring, and the relevance of that to you being a great teacher. There's some wonderful tests that you can do. There's the Myers-Briggs personality test. There is the Big Five factor model, which is a great test that you can do to learn more about your temperament, your preference for the environments that you would like to work in, your preference for situations in terms of how you prefer to communicate, how you learn, etc. There are also activities that you can do There's all sorts of additional, My Future, for example, has some great little quizzes and things you can learn more about your skills. And also understanding what motivates you is also really important in terms of, thriving in the work that you do. And the ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling here is your values. And when you engage in work that is aligned with what is most important for you and what matters to you the most, there is all sorts of evidence that suggests that you will be able to be a better fit in the organisation. So, for example, if you value one of your top values is sustainability and the environment, and you get into an organisation that is really active and environmentally conscious around their use of power, their perhaps the company cars that they have, etc. And if that is the most important thing for you, then there is, not saying that alone will be your happiness in the organisation, but there is a chance that you will be with people that have like-minded interests. And as I said, we will talk more about this. There's a lot of really interesting science around, so you could look at, so one of the things that's come up for a couple of times for me is your ikigai, which is in Japan, finding your ikigai, which is the intersect between what you love, what you're good at, and purpose and meaning. There's a lot of really interesting research. And in fact, I'll type into the chat box. One of the things that Susie would be really familiar with is the VIA character strengths. Let me just double check the... and this is actually a study done by a group of scientists. Oh, I think somebody might have already typed it in there. Oh. Oh, somebody, oh, yes, like to join. Yes, there will be a recording. Thank you. Yes. So viacharacter.org, Susie's team, viacharacter.org. This is a fantastic study that you could use to help you. It takes about 20 minutes to take the test to learn more about your strengths. As one example, it was done by a group of scientists around the world. I think there's about 30 different scientists, and they studied human beings' innate strengths. And they've come up with a collection of strengths that are innate to all human beings, and people will fall into particular categories. And what they found is that if you use your top strengths in your life, both personally and professionally, there is opportunity for optimum well-being and success. That's one study that I absolutely love, but there's lots of really exciting literature, research in this field, and lots of an increasing intersect between some of the woo-woo, as we would call it, some of the woo-woo and sort of things around intuition and manifestation, and some of those other things that we've sort of thought were woo-woo, but some actual evidence to suggest. But looking at our strengths and what we're really good at helps to communicate our uniqueness, but also when we are using our strengths, we are actually, I'll just refer really quick. There's a recent study that's come out where we can categorize what we're really good at into A, B, C, and D. And when we are working and doing work in our A, and we've got our A people around us, we are on fire. And we will talk more, or we and the team and Susie and Alison will be here for our, the lights, I'll have to wiggle in here. Lights come back on again. When we will talk more about each of these, and I just want to give you a bit of an overview, but the theory stands that once you know a little bit about who you are, ideally you want to know lots and lots and lots and lots, but even having some of that insight, some of that awareness can help you make better decisions in terms of looking for organizations and experience and opportunities where you are going to be a great fit. So looking out for opportunities. And here is just a really small sample. It's a nice, sweet little acronym to help you remember how you can look for opportunities. And if you, no matter where you are in your study, and in fact, I'd love to hear if you could just type into the chat box where you are up to in your study. So are you first year, second year, or perhaps even, I had he was an undergraduate student the other day, and he was up to 6 years, but he was working in a job that was alongside his study. So I'd love to hear where you are at. Susie's team are embedded, and you'll come across their team in education, in nursing, and in more, and you'll meet me in the business. But one of the big over in the last probably, Susie, so it's probably 7 years, is the emphasis on career development in those early stages. It's not to say that you can't start thinking about, so wherever you're at, if you're in your second year, your last term, etc., all perfect, you can still nail it. But the earlier you start adding little things to your suite, and think of it like a portfolio, a suite of your fabulousness, you can optimize your success. So here are, and so the more you can learn about and start to explore the opportunities that are out there, explore areas of growth, explore the labour market, so the employment market, start getting your LinkedIn, and we'll talk about LinkedIn coming up, join some associations, chatting to family, friends, classmates. I'm a huge advocate for mentors. I have been very, very fortunate. You don't have to have a formal mentor. It might be some of your lecturers can be your mentors. Even you could have, if you've got, perhaps if you're doing a PhD, you've got others that are doing their PhD that just have more, professional work experience than you. They can become a form of informal mentor for you as well. There are all sorts of career events, industry events, and if you join, oh, nice, thank you. Got some chats just going in the back here. Oh, first year. Thank you. Thanks, Di. All right, beautiful. That gives me and if the others could type in what year you're in, that's helpful for me, because I'll talk to the beginning and to the nice one. Thanks, Di. Thank you, Rissa. I think Jan, you might be in your second year there. Yeah, nice. Okay, first year, awesome. Super stoked to have you here. Whatever point I see, and I'm no doubt that Susie would agree with this, I see an enormous correlation between those that engage with career development resources and their success in terms of, if it's second, third, first, the terms are all over the place, that there is a higher likelihood of success. So whenever you come across the opportunity, it is amazing. All right. Now, one of the things that when I got onto this, so much changes and so even between November and now, so many micro changes in the landscape, but bigger changes in the so for example the employment sector for students. So one of the massive changes in terms of opportunities for students is that post-pandemic there are so many more opportunities than there were. So here, I'm predominantly at the Gold Coast, for example. If we go back 5 or 6 years, students really struggled to even get voluntary jobs. So as postgraduate students, you have so many opportunities to gain so many more opportunities to gain experience. So we have new and unique challenges as individuals and as students that are more difficult than prior to the pandemic, absolutely. But one of the big changes is that there is work everywhere. There is work in education. There is work in in psychology. There is work everywhere. Work doesn't quite look like it used to, but there is work everywhere. So I want you to feel confident and optimistic because you deserve to feel optimistic, not only because you're a top student by coming here, but by also knowing that there are multiple opportunities. Now, one of the big things is that it's not necessarily plain to see the work in that, it's in a job ad and, it's a full salary package and all the rest of it. There is a multitude of hidden work, but I will come to that. Here's just a nice little visual of ways that you can gain, frog in my throat, that you can gain knowledge about opportunities and become more aware. And the more that you engage with the profession, or more broadly, so for example, if you're doing business and you're not sure if you want to do marketing or accounting or management, even if you look at if you were to look at other people, alumni, for example, that have done MBAs, and look at where they've gone and what sort of experience, that just as one small example, it can give you information. I could probably spend a whole day actually talking about opportunity awareness. But one of the great things, one of the most, I try to, not always perfect at it, but I will try to look for the gold, look for the optimism, and look for the opportunity. And one of the biggest opportunities following the pandemic is how you can actually find, there's so many more free online webinars, seminars, workshops. There is free stuff everywhere. What I have noticed in the last kind of 12 months is that those that are, that, how would I describe it, the world leaders in that space, is they're starting to kind of repackage, bundle, and then find different ways to charge. But your access to webinars and all sorts of stuff is more so than ever. All right, beautiful. So we've got first year. Fabulous. Lots and lots of first years. So welcome to the first years, and I've still got heaps for you. Di at the tail end there. My suggestion for you, Di, is at the end of this series, if you want to work with me or Susie's, if at the timing's not right, you want to work with Susie's team for that specific, really tailored approach to your application, and walking you through any final career decision making and your interview. But we're going to cover off on some of the key things, and just some cool things that I've come across recently. Oh, nice. Thanks, Di. Beautiful. Thank you. So this, I along with with Susie's team. So for all transparency, I worked with Susie's team, feels like yesterday, but I think it was about 6 years ago. And if you're in the background, Susie, maybe 6 or 8 years ago, for about 4 years. And I tell you what, the visibility and the hidden job market is even more so than back there. And this slide has more meaning for me every year that passes in terms of the hidden jobs that are around, which means that two things. I am stoked that you're here. As you immerse yourself in your profession, it gets easier to navigate the hidden job market because you understand your industry, you understand, you've got more of a network. However, there are people that can, so for example, I've had students, top students over the years, and some that aren't even necessarily like they haven't got HDs, but they're really driven to do well, that have engaged with me, and then they have opportunities have come, informal opportunities. And so I've said, oh, hey, I've just heard about this, and that's where hidden stuff can be. So if you've got a lecturer or a tutor, somebody in the international office that you really like, that you engage with, perhaps it might be somebody in Allison's team. Allison's and her team are great resources, people to get to know in terms of the people on the ground, us in the front line, the careers team. We know things that are going on behind the scenes. There is lots and lots and lots of hidden work. But what I would suggest in terms of finding the hidden stuff and thriving is to engage in, wherever you can, engage in what you love, which can be hard in a financial crisis when we're sort of driven to, look for the dollars. Yes, you must absolutely make sure that you've got your financial circumstances cared for. But what we know is, from the science, is the happiest people are not those that are making buckets of money. The happiest and the wellest people are those that are making good to very good money. So, and I think we all indirectly know that anyway. So that's really exciting in terms of still being able to follow what you love. And if you follow what you love, you're going to be kind of curious to find out about the hidden job market, but you're more likely to want to engage. So here's some other people that could be helpful. Family, friends. You'd be amazed at, your uncle, your brother-in-law, your sister's friend, people at the gym, people in the shops. And if you tell people what you're doing, where you're going, be curious, ask questions, and to just have those chats. It can be, post-pandemic, harder, but human beings love to help. And just back one page here, the SCU alumni. So if you haven't enjoyed that, and of course, I think if you're here, you probably joined the Postgraduate Association. Come along to all of the events that they have. They also, if you're at the Gold Coast, they do lunches here. Nice place to network, to meet people. And I'm conscious too of people feeling like they're isolated, but wherever you can, take these opportunities. Now, one thing I know is hard is that when we get really busy, but be strategic about what you can and can't do in terms of your own energy, etc. Researcher employers, etc. Don't rely on the computer. So super duper important. Next week, I'm going to talk about automatic tracking systems. I think there are hundreds of thousands, probably thousands of people Australia-wide that are incredible employees, but the automatic tracking systems don't like their resumes. Super duper duper important, or to listen into that, because I do not want any of our students stuck and they've got a beautiful resume, but it's got too much formatting in it. And the automatic tracking, just as one example, the automatic tracking systems hate lots of formatting. And so then it won't match you. It won't match you, or it'll chop up your resume and spit it out and make you look like a poor candidate. So please, please, please come along to that. Try to reach out to the hiring manager. I'll talk about more of this stuff in more detail next week. Here are a few other things: sporting events, short courses, English. So I met some students here on campus, and it was lovely. It was a really tiny class here the day before yesterday. It was a professional development unit. In fact, anybody that is doing postgraduate study and has an elective, we've got professional development in the workplace coming up in term 3. I encourage you to come along and do that unit. It's an extension of what we're doing in here. You get to work on assignments and you get to work on a career plan. So if you have an opportunity to do that unit, it is a wonderful way to get you prepared for if you're in the business faculty. But what made me think about that was I was in the undergraduate professional development unit the other day, and I had these international students. It was really lovely, and they had met each other on a field trip that they'd gone on, which was just really nice. And there was a confidence about them that I could see. And confidence comes through actions, unfortunately, and a whole lot of mistakes, and then getting back up there and having another crack at it. That's how we build our confidence. And confidence is like a muscle. It's not something most human beings, I mean, yes, there's some nature nurture in there, but we assume confident people are just naturally confident. Many confident people work at building it, but you can, and again, there's some great science, you can build your confidence like a muscle, and it comes from action. And I love that you guys are here, because by showing up here, you are showing your drive. What that demonstrates to me is your own drive for commitment to your future, and it is your future. And I think one of the things that we're not taught, and I'm so conscious of, and it's a ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling, it's your career. It's not your mother's, your brothers, your sisters, your families. It's your life, and your working life is going to be a big part. Well, it's a big part of most people's life if you have to work, but it's up to you to look after it and to nurture it and to manage it and to optimize it. And so in that optimization, here are some of the things that employers look for when they're looking for their best candidates. Emotional intelligence, there's some tests that you can do to measure your emotional intelligence. So are you aware of your own emotions, the emotions of others? Are you able to read the emotions of others in a work setting? Where do you need to improve? Ongoing upskilling. And you can gain skills by, for example, if you're a regional area and you go and do some volunteering on a marathon or the local markets, just as an example. We're going to take a break. I think I don't want to lose you guys, because I'm about to jump into, I think that's a nice spot to take 5 minutes, because I know that 5 minutes, and then we might wrap up a little bit, and then we've got time for questions so I don't completely burn you out. But I might make the time for the break shorter, so you're not just sitting there going, God, I wish you'd come back. So let's come back in 5, or let's make it 6 minutes time. All right. Hello, Alison.
Hi, Bec, are you able just to pause the recording while we're on a break? Lovely.
Hello, and we are back again. And during the break, we were just having a little bit of a chat about something that I had talked about before in terms of where you join or discover the importance of really embedding career actions in your study. And I was just saying, I'm genuinely, and I know that Susie would feel the same, genuinely rapt whenever people engage with careers, but even more so early on, because what I have observed is that students that if you take a small amount of steps that may include a part-time job, maybe a little seminar, online seminar, workshop, join a group, perhaps volunteer at a local event, you've got a whole page that you could potentially put on there, that you could expand that out to a whole page of your 3 pages of your resume, which we'll talk about more next week. And if we go back to the beginning of this class where we talked about, uniqueness and standing out, and if we compare apples for apples, we have somebody that's got high distinctions, great, beautiful, employers love that, sure. But it's not the only thing that they want. And then you have a student they've got a part-time job, they've done some volunteering, they've done a tiny little seminar online, and a little bit of volunteering, a few other little things. I know, and we know as career practitioners, who the employer is going to most likely want to. It's not necessarily, immediately one or the other, but there's a great likelihood that they will be curious and interested, and also you will stand out. If you think about it from the employer's perspective, they get hundreds and hundreds of, I work in teams and I communicate, and yes, but if you've got ways that you can demonstrate that with specific activities that you've undertaken, it gives you some more ways to connect with the employer. All right. So, and when we're connecting with the employer, we're going to be connecting in many instances with a cover letter. Now, here's a ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling. I'll give you ding-a-ling-a-lings. I like somebody told me, I got feedback on it. She said, I liked your ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling. So I'm going to do, and I do a ding-a-ling-a-ling because they're just like, I guess those moments where it could actually be life-changing. So there are opportunities where there's an optional to include a cover letter or to not include a cover letter. My advice to you always is to include a cover letter. And as we move into, more platforms in terms of communicating with potential employers, i.e., for example, applying directly on LinkedIn, it gives you an option whether to include a cover letter or not. And yeah, you want to apply quickly, of course, to show your enthusiasm for the job, and your, you want to be the top candidate. But you also want to show that you go above and beyond. And I have seen multiple times where a job has come up on LinkedIn and it's been advertised for 4 minutes, and there's been 40 applicants, and I think, how could they have possibly written, how could they even have tailored their link, and so it just baffles me. Yes, you do want to move quickly, etc., but if you take some time to make some, if it's something you really want and it's on LinkedIn, make some tweaks to your LinkedIn, and always have a cover letter for my ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling. All right. So we're going to talk next week And these days, one of my ding-a-ling-a-lings is do not touch too many buttons, because now there's so many buttons that a new button appears under the button. All right. Okay. So here's a few things. If for some reason I don't see you next week, but I hope I see you next week, because we're going to expand on all of this, you could use ChatGTP, sure, to get the foundations. I would still absolutely say tailor it. ChatGTP is not going to know you uniquely as an individual human being on this planet. There is only one of you, and you're it. And you are, if you're applying for the job, you want to tell them who you are, along with everything that's going to make you stand out. And you will be able to do that, as I said, by engaging with the careers team, but before engaging with them, face to face, diving into their career resources. So your skills, experience, but see the italics here, relevant to the job requirement. So wherever you can, you want to weave that back, give specific examples and weave it back into the specific job that you are applying for. Don't touch that button, Bec. Right. Now, when you are doing a cover letter, and we'll talk more about this next week, that first paragraph, having the killer hook, needs to engage the reader. And I'll try to always share with you, different things that come up along the way. And one thing that I saw recently, which was actually really cool, I've only seen one student do it, but they actually, in their first paragraph, we've always encouraged, as practitioners, always encourage people to, to give them your standout features, your story in that first paragraph. However, I saw, and then just to backtrack a little bit, we often have suggested that towards the end, you tell them why you want to work for the organisation. And recently I saw somebody tell them in the first paragraph what was amazing about the organisation and why they were a great fit. And in fact, that worked really rather well. So whatever approach you take, you want to capture their attention. But before, and we'll talk about this, the automatic tracking system, before you get a human being, you're going to get a computer. So you need to get, if you haven't got your a Seek profile set up, I would get that set up ASAP. And I would, well, if you're looking for work in the short term, get that ready for next week. Unfortunately, in the world that we're in at the moment, is that a computer, unless you have the good fortune, and that's why I'd really encourage the hidden market, have the good fortune of chatting directly with an employer via one of your connections, then you have that chance of not being, not knowing enough of what the skills are, because occasionally the skills that, the employers say they want are, they're more left field than even you could even imagine. And so but they're not necessarily, they're things that somebody maybe in HR has put in, but it's not necessarily what the person that's going to be interviewing. So there can be a bit of a, what would I call it, like an abyss where you can fall into. So it's a numbers game here. You need to be able to convince and capture the human being when they read it. But before that, you need to be able to capture the requirements of the automatic tracking systems, which we'll talk more about next week. So it is more challenging, I would say. But as I said, there are more opportunities for hidden work, more so than ever. And I'd say wherever possible, even to just get your foot in the door into, an organisation, whether it's, if it's state government, for example. I know several people that have gotten into state government, into different, one's in IT, one's in environmental science. And once you're in, you get a couple of casual gigs, then you're in the system, you understand the logo, the lingo, etc., etc. Right. So here is, in fact, this is one of Susie's team's beautiful samples here of a cover letter. We will go through all of this next week, but what I would like to highlight to you is that please take that extra time to find out who you're actually attentioning your application to. Take the time to go old school, even if even if you've never written. I heard the other day that these people don't, it's normal, don't know what a stamp is. So things have changed, but the person that you're sending this to might be 60 or 70 years old and still wants, old school style. So best to be more cautious and to be more formal than to say, hey, how are you going? All right. So keep it formal, but focus on the outcomes and your achievements associated with your work and examples wherever you can. More about that next week. Here's a little visual. There will be a multitude of different approaches to this. What I have observed over the last couple of years is that how employers communicate, in what order. I had an example the other day where somebody got the job, went through 3 layers of recruitment, got the job before, and then they were putting the contract together for the the new employee, and then asked for the references, for the reference check. So there are the landscape continues to change. So here's a few things that I would suggest. Follow all of the instructions and expect the unexpected, all right? But follow the instructions. So even if you're going for a job with, Queensland Health and New South Wales Health and then Northern Territory Health, just as an example, and it's the same type of role, the instructions and the requirements may be different. One might want a 2-page cover letter. So don't make any assumptions about anything and follow all of the instructions, which can be quite overwhelming in some of the, particularly for government and sometimes for not-for-profit positions, but certainly any, government roles and so forth. Cover letter. Sometimes they'll ask for a cover letter and a selection criteria together. Sometimes they will ask for, sometimes you'll have to fill out the stuff on LinkedIn, not LinkedIn, on Seek, and then it'll send you to their own company website, and then you have to fill out the application on there as well. So allow plenty of time. And apply for less jobs rather than more. So if you think about that gentleman at the beginning, don't go for a scattergun approach and apply for 100,000 jobs all over the place, and do a half an effort. Do really tailored and small and give it all the love in the world, and then try to find out, okay, I'm not having any wins here. What could potentially, and that's when you can take some feedback from the team. I'll bring some of those examples next week. There's some free, very, very useful little checkers that you can use online to help you get a sense of like what the automatic tracking system might be looking for as well, to tweak your resume and your LinkedIn. So we'll talk. I'll share some of those with you next week. General tips: keep your spelling, grammar, consistent headings. So with your resume, 2 to 3 pages. Occasionally I've seen a cracker of a 1-pager. But what I would say is have 2 really punchy pages than 2.5 page. I personally hate half a page done because it looks like you kind of got bored and, forgot what you're doing or whatever. So however you do it, make sure the page is full. Have 2 to 3 referees. These days, I think 2 tends to be fine. Generally, we say no photos. However, I have had instances where I've seen, I had a lady a number of years ago, and I've never forgotten it. She was an older, mature age student, and she was going for a job as a professional conference organizer. And professional conference organisers, they have a particular, just like, actually 2 examples. A professional conference organiser, she just dressed and presented herself in the framing and the approach that she took in terms of presenting herself. And she put a photo on there, and I was like, damn, you look just like a professional conference organiser. And it worked brilliantly for her. I had a student a couple of years before that, and he was going for a job in fisheries. Wow. And he didn't actually have any experience in fisheries, but he just knew the lingo. But he also put this, like he sort of showed his interest. It was as a picture of him on the boat. But some of the fisheries work can actually be out on site. But just the way that he put that all together, you could just see that. And I guess that one, so be cautious. I wouldn't say go and popping yourself a picture on a boat, randomly. Think about it in its suitability to the job. I saw another one a girl did, and she was going for a job on the radio, and like a DJ or presenter, and she's really really bubbly, and you got that real sense from the photo. Be cautious, but as we said here, do not. There are instances where we say generally don't, but the thing is nowadays you connect them to your LinkedIn. I would say always have a picture of your LinkedIn. Check your settings on your LinkedIn, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about LinkedIn coming up. But have a photo on there, but do not have anything to do with your marital status, anything to do with your visa. Also, we'll talk about this on LinkedIn. There's some interesting Australia, and I just heard something really interesting on the radio on the way here that we are more and more prone to cyber risk here in Australia, and one of the ways is LinkedIn. If you've got too much of your personal details in your contact, they want to be able to contact you, yes, but don't go giving them everything so that somebody can go and copy. And steal, like identity theft, just as one example. Now, here we go. All right. So, here are some of the key headings. We're going to dive into all of this more deeply. There are variations of this. This hasn't really changed. One of the things that I have observed actually in our profession, in Susie and I's profession, is that I've seen a shift away from in LinkedIn. I first noticed it with another professional, is that they didn't have all of their achievements within their roles, which I thought was interesting. I think it looks better to have it in there, but there does. I'm involved in another unit, another academic unit elsewhere, and I noticed that team, it's a future of work team, and I noticed as a requirement they're not asking for all of the individual achievements. Personally, I think it looks good, and this is stepping ahead for LinkedIn, but absolutely include it in your resume. Relevant experience and placement. If you have the opportunity to do any type of placement, even if it's 4 weeks, even if it's 1 day a week, it looks brilliant. And I know that Susie is really heavily involved with working with students and their placements and helping students to articulate and to communicate the results from their placements. But don't panic if you happen to be here, you're at the end of your studies and you haven't got any of these. This is what this is where the teams, Susie's team can be amazing, and myself here, if it's at the end of this series, help you to unpack other things. We're here and trained to prompt you in terms of finding out things. But one way to remember some of the things, your grandmother, your sister, your partner, your brother, your best friend, they always remember things that you've forgotten, that you've done, that could be useful. So some of the ways, achievements, and please don't panic and kind of judge yourself against, I haven't got this and I haven't got that. Think about what you do have, and also know that you're only at right where you're at right now in your professional life. So it might be that you've just, maybe it's high school. You guys will have undergraduate qualifications. But if there's something, if you're still, like if you went straight from high school into your undergrad and then into your postgrad, you could capture something. I wouldn't spend a lot, but if you had to sort of drill down. But your undergraduate study, there are things from that alone, if you're looking, if you're lacking in experience, that you could tailor. It could be a project, it could be a presentation, it could be working in teams, etc., etc. Your part-time work, things that, if you are studying abroad, as many of you guys here, or the students live here are, it may be, maybe you worked in your country of origin in the family business, for example. Plenty of things that you do in your study that you can draw on as examples. Automatic tracking systems I'll be talking about next week because they can have an enormous impact on your here are, if you don't get the opportunity to come back with us next week, but I do hope to see you, and we all hope to see you. Check your font. These are the fonts that it likes. Here's a ding-a-ling-a-ling. When you're in LinkedIn, you can actually get LinkedIn to create a resume for you. That resume does not, how odd is this? Automatic tracking systems hate the font. It looks really nice. It download, if you have a look, if you've already got LinkedIn. It makes a really nice, makes you a nice snazzy one. That's fine to send to a, like an email or potential recruiter, but the automatic tracking systems absolutely hate it, which is a little bit ironic. So keep it simple. Susie's team has sample resumes that are absolutely brilliant. We've got some other suggestions of ones, but there are samples, so they've put all the bones in there. I would suggest, for ease and for confidence, is to use the samples that Susie's team provide. And so here is where you can access some of these. Hopefully your landing page hasn't, I know they do update some of their landing pages and things, but they have sample resumes there that are super duper duper, and they keep refining the samples they have and adding things, because we know here at SCU we have additional courses and another course that starts, and etc., etc. So they're continuously updating it. Right, going like the speed of light here. On to the interview. So here's something cool that I was listening to. Well, I think it's pretty cool. I did mention this in last year's series, but I just listened to some more really interesting stuff around. You're predominantly in the climate that we're in. You're going to have, and we can have a little go at this quiz in a sec. You're going to have an interview. This is I'm about to do a ding-a-ling-a-ling. You're going to have an interview. It is most likely you're going to have an interview in a online environment. At the moment, things change so quickly. Zoom is a classic one. Just in the time, Alison and Susie and I have been working, there's been upgrades and all features added, and so things change. But currently, places where interviews are held commonly are Microsoft Teams, Zoom. They're the most common. Feel free to jump in, Susie, if there's sometimes, for the actual meeting itself. But I don't want to, we're going to talk more about each of these there are a multitude of different ways now that interview, and I put it in inverted commas, process might take place. I will touch on it in a minute, but I wanted to tell you the cool thing that I heard the other day that I sort of have mentioned before, but I just really heard it reinforced. As practitioners, we for a long time have been talking about, or as long as I can remember, talking about first impressions. And we know that we make a really snap judgment of somebody very quickly about A, whether we like them, and B, whether we trust them. We trust their level of confidence, and that happens really quickly. We're talking under a couple of minutes. So your capacity to make a lasting impact and impression and to bedazzle, as somebody used the word the other day, I was like, oh, I love it. Let's bedazzle. Bedazzle that viewer, interviewer, business partner, whatever it is, you want to bedazzle them really quickly. Or you need to bedazzle them really quickly to build that rapport, and to get that create that sense of trust. And one of the ways that I talked about last year, but it just had it really drilled down to me, is actually showing your hands. And it's and so in this environment, in a small window, where I'm going to change the window here so you can see me, is that, as you can see, so in preparation for this class here today, I'm in a different room, and one of the things that's bothering me as a career practitioner is what you got. All transparency. Oh no, it's not a telephone. It's a hand wipe. But I think it is. And I am at Southern Cross University, so it's all fine. However, all you see is me. Here, this. And so, if the employer can't see your hands, primarily, as human beings, we are driven for security and for safety. And if the employer can't see or does not see your hands in the first, and in fact, when I came in here this morning, I was waving my hands around. But if they can't or don't see your hands within the first, I remember it was 30 seconds, within the first minute or so, it's not that you won't necessarily get the job, but you are less likely, because when we are primed to be able to, when we're developing trust and connection, we are wired for safety and security as human beings. So seeing hands is really important. Now, one of the things that I was listening to recently, the one that they say is the top one for is this what they call the steeple, so hands resting on the toe. Personally, But do not get distracted and start drumming your fingers. We all know, we've seen somebody drum the fingers, not the geo. However, the steeple. But hand use is important for the interview. So, seems like a lot of time to be spending talking about that, but it is absolutely critical. And also, the thing that I've been thinking about with the, when you come on to, so is that immediacy of like, and it can be hard for introverts, and also when you're nervous, is to show like super duper 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 enthusiasm. Now, I still feel a little bit awkward talking about an interview and showing enthusiasm. You'd think that it would naturally be something that people do. But in fact, over a period of a couple of years, I had consistent feedback from an organisation called Feros Care that was coming to the university to help students with employability. And over that period, 2 different staff members mentioned that one of the things that they observed was that people weren't showing enthusiasm. And I like, the first time I heard it, I was like, yeah. And I talked about it. And the second time, and it's because you're frightened and you want to be your best. You want to be perfect. And when we're trying to be perfect, we're not always making a connection. And we're in here rather than being present with the person that is chatting with us in that interview. And same with, if it's in a real live, in a live situation. So you are more likely, and these employers, and I loved it, really reaffirms over that period of reminding twice over a couple of years and 2 different staff, is that your capacity to make a connection and show enthusiasm. And they gave a specific example. They had an IT role, and they had a young, and I say younger, but younger in terms of experience, and a person with greater experience. It was an IT role, and they picked the person with far less experience who was just gunning for that opportunity. So I found that really encouraging, to be really reminded of the nature of, because we can just make assumptions, about things. And if I answer everything correctly, then I will, I am the best candidate for the job. Yes, you are the best candidate for the job, but you need to show that enthusiasm. Now, before I get into this little quiz, the other thing that I love, and I think Susie will be familiar with this, there's Amy Cuddy's TED Talk. She talks about body language, and she talks about power poses. And so if you are preparing for an interview, and there is the science, and I have to say that I love all this stuff, but I love when it's science, when the science is there. And you as graduate, undergraduate, you finish your undergraduate degree and you're doing postgraduate, you obviously have some interest and a love of learning and being able to, you're in academia. So I love the science. And so the science is there that when these people did power poses, that you can actually physiologically, even in a setting like this, that when you, and so have a watch of her, and she's got a few different things. She's amazing on body language. What they found was when people practice these power poses, they had a greater impact with their potential employer. Now, I have practiced this myself, but more importantly, I have practiced it. I have a very quick example of a young lady who I ran into. She works in a cafe, and she decided that she wanted to get a job in real estate. I said, buy coffee from her all the time. She said, oh, Beck, I'm going for a job. And I said, oh my gosh, you've got to practice these power poses. Anyway, went through that with her. And then a few weeks passed, and I saw her again, and she said, oh, Beck, I've got the job. And she goes, I did the power pose. And I'm like, you little ripper. So there's a few things that you can do. I'm conscious of time. I want to allow enough time for questions. Got some beeping in the background here. All right. So here's just, let's just quickly work through this together for a bit of fun. Is it better to be overdressed for an interview than underdressed? And then you can just type 1 and then put T or F. And let's work through all of them, and then I'll see your responses. 2, the first 90 seconds of an interview largely impact how successful you will be for the interview. And you guys are going to show your hands. Is it better to talk about a technical area of weakness than a personality issue? True or false? Is it better to ask any questions at the interview than asking 1 or 2? Asking what the salary level is in an interview is a good idea. True or false? Is it better to talk more about what I have done than what I have achieved? Is it generally a waste of time preparing for an interview? I've got jobs without having to prepare. And the final one is sending a thank you letter after the interview is it well regarded to send a thank you letter? All right, anybody like to have a go at any of those true or falses? Susie will be having a little chuckle about some away about some of some of these. And thank you. Thank you, Alison. Yeah, I do laugh. It is better. Definitely better to overdress. Right, and I am laughing, and not for the overshare, but I did once. I really heavily overdressed without. It was in the days where we met face to face, and I didn't scope out what the staff were wearing. So I would suggest wherever you can do a recce. If you can, have a look at what the culture looks like, and it's a moving landscape in terms of how we dress and in the workplace and those sorts of things. And I went, Susie we laugh, I went full 3P. I wasn't quite 3-piece suit, but it was the full suit. I think full suits are coming back into fashion. And the guy interviewing me, he turned up in his thongs. And it was boiling hot. And in hindsight, it's doing a little bit of a recce, but it is definitely best to be overdressed. Yep. Nice one. Thank you. Yes. Better to be overdressed. And also, we've probably all heard the term, you dress for your boss's job, you dress for the job, not the one you're going for, but the next one that you want. So safer, but I would definitely overdress. And this is a personal thing. If you're on Zoom, I see, fashion changes and sleeveless tops. You can have plenty of, for women, plenty of, lovely sleeveless tops. But I would suggest on Zoom, because that's all they can see, I would go for, like, you don't have to have, you know, like a suit jacket on like me and, you know, full sleeves or whatever, but I would suggest, and also culturally, we have really diverse, you know, teams that, you know, and you may be, you want to minimize any, anywhere where they can just go, nope, you're out. And for things that, yeah, so I would suggest err on the side of caution and conservative. And it's a really nuanced, or, you know, there's a lot of variables to all of this, which we'll cover. There's lots and lots of things, and we can have some bigger chats about this, because I've seen all sorts of things over the years that I'd like to share with you, you know, things that have and haven't worked, where there can be some variables on some of the, and I'd love to, perhaps my dear Susie would like to come in and talk about some of the things that perhaps she's seen over the years as well. And Alison, anybody that's you also super duper welcome to jump in. Yes, so we know that the first minute and a half, yes, are super duper duper important to the making, and that's where, if you can, particularly, you know, as you can see, I was so conscious, I'm in a different room to, because I wanted to make sure I got the technology, but I was super duper conscious of that, but also this blue thing here, because, and I'm on campus here because it's distracting. All right. So you want to, if you have to create a video also, even like the bend in a doorway can be really distracting. So you want to minimize any distractions behind you, so that you can have that greatest impact immediately up front with them. Is it better to not ask any questions? It is definitely better to ask questions. What I would say, here's a ding-a-ling-a-ling, what I've observed through putting this question out to students often want to ask and the things that they're most curious about, which is money and training. And if you're behind the scenes, and if there's anything you ever disagree with, I'd love to hear any different perspectives on any of this. I would say, I'd say stay away from money unless they bring up money. And I would say stay away from, you. We know you're ambitious, or not that we know you're ambitious, but if you're going for work, you obviously want to achieve. And when students want to ask about ongoing training and development, and it can sometimes come across as, I just want to grab that so I can get that. I often see it in students' cover letters. They say, oh, I want to get this training for me, rather than, organizations want to know what you can do for them, how you can contribute for them. So it's all about framing. So if you can frame it, so just stay away from money unless they bring it up. Of course, you want to know about money, but there's ways you can find out about the money, and you can ask mentors, you can have a look at industry standards, you can do some research, you can look at pay scales. You can prepare yourself. If it does come to money, I would say go to the high end, but don't go to the top, and don't go to the low end, and don't even go to the middle. But you want to know, I'm so conscious, know your worth and your love and who you are, but you don't want to sell yourself out at the bottom end, and you don't want to look like all you're driven by is money as well. You want to be known for your, that your contribution is important and valued, and you want to demonstrate that, but also know you are worthwhile to be here. Did you want to add something to that, Alison?
Oh, just a brief comment about that first one about what to wear or whatever. And
yes.
You kind of said it anyway, about just whether male or female, being modest and covering your skin, nothing low cut, nothing, no short skirts, all that sort of. But the same for men, no sort of singlets or whatever. Yeah.
Yes.
Modesty is always the way to go. Hey.
Yeah, and I always feel a bit awkward talking about it, but then I still see, and you don't know what you don't know as well, do you? You know, like we're teaching this stuff and we've been in workplaces longer, but if you haven't been in a workplace and the world's more casual and less formal, isn't it? We've got lots of different ways of communicating and pictures of, on platforms and things. And so I had recently had very, very recently had some examples of some great students, and they had to do an e-portfolio, and I had this lovely, she'd done a great job of articulating her values. She had a really low cut, really, really, it was a lovely picture if it was on her Facebook, totally fine.
Yeah.
But you don't know, so you don't know what you don't know, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so she didn't know, because you don't know if you haven't been in a modern well, it doesn't even a modern workplace now, they still don't want you to be too much, it's less formal, definitely post pandemic, I would say, more broadly. But I would say look at what other people, how others dress in that workplace.
That's right.
And
I guess once you're
one step
working there,
up.
then you can observe, what the standard is. But
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's important too that you said as well, for gentlemen, and also those that, LGBTQI communities. However, you want to be yourself, absolutely.
Well, that's true.
But you also want to just be mindful of, I think the word modest, and appropriate. And this is why I thought it was sort of a bigger even in more detail for our interview one, because I have seen, you want to look like, I've seen a guy that he was covered in tats, but the company he was going for, it was tats, and he had all his design on his shirt, but the company was a skateboarding. And I just looked at him and I was like, yes, you look, he had the same, that comes back to values and, like interests and hobbies. And I looked at the website of the company and he just looked like he should have been in that shop.
Yeah. Perfect.
So
yeah.
there's some sort of other features around that. So I think the modesty and a higher, more formal, and then you can adjust all once you get in there. Is it better to talk about what I have done than what you have achieved? What have we got there? Asking 6. That's right. Yeah, you want to focus on achievements. Now, that is, so what they did, I haven't actually got this slide in here, but they did a study and they looked at when employers saw the results of people's work rather than the tasks they were required to do, there was a huge difference between the people that they invited in for an interview. And then in the interview, you're going to be expanding on what you've perhaps done in your selection criteria, and I won't overcomplicate it here in terms of talking about selection criteria. I will talk about it, small percentage, but super duper duper important. And in selection criteria forms part of your cover letter, but in essence, it's all about demonstrating your work at what you have done in your personal and professional life related to your work. The results of, so one way would be you've been in that football team, okay, but what did you do in that football team? You attended game sessions, you mentored other people, you were the leader, you played a particular position, that particular role, you refined your practice, etc., etc. So rather than I just went to the game and enjoyed it, or I just worked in a team, yes, and that's good, but you can just take it that a step. So you look at all of the things that you do. It might be, if you have children, I know many of our postgraduate students have children, so it might be things that you're doing through your children's activities, through their sporting. other things that you do in your community. It might be things that you do if you're caring for other family members. There are all sorts of, and I've seen incredible examples of students that haven't been in formal workplaces recently, but they have found incredible ways to articulate, for example, home care or raising 3 children, as an example, and coming back to postgraduate study. So, and that's where, with unique or those challenges where, Susie's team and myself, if it's appropriate with the timing, are trained to be able to help you, be able to articulate, because that's, it's not something you're doing, but how to it's because it's about framing, okay? And same in the interview is you're framing the achievements that you have done. I would say prepare always for an interview. But somebody made a really good point to me recently about interviews and preparation. You absolutely want to prepare, but you also want to be in your optimum. Okay, so you want to make sure that you've had enough sleep the night before. You've had something to eat, but also in terms of that preparation, that you're not, how would I put it? You're not burnt out and bogged down by that preparation and so the phrase that somebody, shared with me the other day was, don't overthink it. Now it's very hard to not overthink an interview, but I think there's some real value, because when we start to panic and ruminate, they're going to ask me this, they're going to ask me that, I'm afraid they'll ask me this, I'm afraid they'll ask me that. It takes you into a different mindset, and it takes you out of that sense of ownership and empowerment of you've got this, all right? So there's a balance between definitely preparing, I think having some notes. One of the things that I often suggest, and I still would keep it for myself, is a big piece of cardboard, and we'll talk about this in the interview, and then doing big circles and then some arrows of examples of all the things that you've done. You can even have that, you don't want to have it so you got to go like this, but have it there. So preparation is absolutely critical, but you want to also make sure that you're rested and you're not like so tired. I remember seeing this with the nurses, that they so wanted the job that they lost their capacity to be themselves as well, because they kind of learnt their answers. And then the last one, a thank you email. Yes, thank you. Thank yous are great in all professional capacity. The power of kindness and the power of a thank you. Interviewees are becoming more familiar with the thank you process. It used to be a standout. It will still work very, very well for you. I remember a young lady doing osteopathy a couple of years ago, actually more than a couple of years ago now, but she sent a thank you, and she didn't get the job that she wanted, but they told her, because she'd written this beautiful thank you to them, she got a casual job and then went on to work with them. So it does work really, really well. And it doesn't take long. And I'll talk about that in terms of little things and some things that I've been playing around with LinkedIn, and how you can build relationships with little DMs, just like you would if you were, but that's another for later. You see sort of variations on here. I think the main point there is that suitability for the environment that you're in, and don't do what I did in 100-degree heat and 90s style three-piece suit. Now here's some really interesting science, very, very quickly. I'm conscious of time here. That I heard the other day. I'd never heard this before. If you get the magic moment of being able to meet somebody for a face-to-face interview or at a networking event, this blew my mind that actually you should always, if it's okay for you, and I say always, and I put this okay for you, culturally to shake hands. I would always, and would always say, I've always said shake hands anyway, but they've done a study that when you shake hands, it changes something in your relationship with that person and it builds trust. How weird is that? So it changes the chemicals in you, and that's why wild. So we're actually primarily, when we meet somebody, primarily tuned to shake. There's something that happens. You in here? Yeah. Something that happens with that. So strongly suggest shaking hands. Got somebody coming into the room here. All right. We'll talk more about these things around visualizations, water, etc., etc. We're going to take a deeper dive into, we've covered a lot of this, but essentially you're going to be weaving in what you have done in your interview and into your into your resume, your cover letter. You're going to be expanding on that in your interview. All right. It has been a pleasure. Do you have any final? We're going to be expanding on all of this. Hopefully it's been a helpful overview for you. Does anybody have any final quick questions for us? Oh, I can't hear you. Oh, I can't hear you.
Unmute. Would students be interested in a copy of your PowerPoint? And would that be okay?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So what I'll do at the end of, it works nicely at the end of the series. You're not getting multiple emails. I wrap them all up into PDFs and send them all off to you. Beautiful. Thank you.
When to send a thank you email? On the same day after the interview or a few days after?
Great question. I would say a couple of days after. Sorry, that's the first time I've ever had anybody comment. Oh, absolutely, yes. And I would include any of your education, but I'd also try to expand on it. Projects, anything that you can. It's optimal. Absolutely.
Yes, it's really a chance to show off in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, and to add,
if you've got unrelated degrees, I'd put them in. Yeah.
Yeah, add value.
If they've got space.
If you've got space.
About prioritising, I guess, what you can fit. So it shows that you're obviously a studious person.
Yeah.
And if it was relevant some way, you've got to tie it to the relevance of where you're going, I guess. If you can list it, like obviously, but if you want to expand on it, you might need to prioritise whether it's, that's the judgment stuff we work with you on. If you come to an appointment, we can help you decide if it's worthwhile or how to sell it.
Yeah, and the reason I was giving a big nod, I was just conscious that sometimes with our international students, if you're younger and you've gone into postgraduate study, you don't have that additional work experience. So it can give you that opportunity to add some extra value.
Yeah.
All right.
Differentiate you.
Yeah, do a deep dive. Susie, can I leave them if there's anybody that has any other? No, I just didn't want to be in.
Rushing out. You've got someone kicking you out of the room.
Yeah. I guess we've got the 10-minute thing. 10-minute room. Yes, and I don't want to upset them, but I'll see if I can find a room where they won't part. All right. So beautiful to have you guys. Thank you so much for hanging with us. We hope to see you soon. Thank you. Everybody at home that's listening, come along live. Hope it's been helpful for you all. And we hope to see you. We've got a few more. We've got 4 to go. See you, Ming. See you next time. Thank you, Susie. Thank you, Alison. And I'll see you
Bye.
guys.
Okay.
See you.
Bye.
Thank you.